The house was too quiet. Richard Sterling stood in his driveway, staring at the mansion he called home. 20 rooms, marble floors, gold-trimmed walls, everything a man could want, except the one thing money couldn't buy. His hand shook as he turned the key. The door opened with a soft click. Inside, darkness waited. It always did. Even during the day, the house felt dark, like something was missing, like someone had turned off the sun and forgotten to turn it back on. Richard walked through the empty halls. His footsteps echoed. Each step sounded lonely. Once, these halls were different. Once, there was laughter, music, the smell of cookies baking. His wife, Elena, used to fill every room with light. But Elena was gone. 3 years had passed since the accident. 3 years since the car crash took her away. 3 years of silence. Richard touched the wall as he walked. He remembered Elena painting this hallway yellow. "Happy colors for a happy home," she had said, smiling. But the yellow looked gray now. Everything looked gray. He reached the living room and poured himself a drink. The liquid burned his throat, but he didn't care. Pain was better than feeling nothing at all. A photograph sat on the fireplace. Elena, smiling. Next to her, a young boy with bright eyes. His son, Daniel. Richard's chest tightened. Daniel was gone too. Not dead, but gone. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not since the big fight. Not since Daniel shouted, "You care more about money than people," and walked out the door. Richard had been too proud to chase him, too angry to apologize. And now, too much time had passed. He was a billionaire. He owned buildings, companies, cars worth more than most people's houses. But he couldn't buy back his son. He couldn't buy back Elena. He couldn't buy back the years he wasted being cold and distant. The drink glass felt heavy in his hand. Outside, thunder rumbled. A storm was coming. Richard walked to the window and watched dark clouds gather. Rain began to fall, tapping against the glass like tiny fingers. He turned on the television. He needed noise. Any noise. Silence made him think too much. The news appeared on the screen. A reporter stood in the rain, holding a microphone. Behind her, flames rose into the sky. "The Mercy Home orphanage is completely destroyed," the reporter said. "The fire started around midnight. Thankfully, all the children escaped safely, but they've lost everything. These children have nowhere to go." The camera moved. It showed children standing in the rain. They were wrapped in blankets, shivering. Some were crying. Others just stared at the burning building with empty eyes. Then Richard saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 years old. She had dark skin and hair braided with colorful beads. She wasn't crying like the others. She just stood there, holding a stuffed rabbit. The rabbit was missing an ear, but it was her eyes that stopped Richard's heart. Those eyes looked old, tired, like they'd seen too much sadness for such a young face. But there was something else too, something strong, something that refused to break. Richard knew those eyes. He saw them in his mirror every morning. The reporter walked over to the girl. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Amara," the girl whispered. Her voice was small but steady. "Are you scared?" Amara looked at the camera, straight at it, straight at Richard, though she didn't know he was watching. "I'm always a little scared," she said. "But being scared doesn't mean you give up." Something cracked inside Richard's chest, like ice breaking, like a door opening after being locked for years. He grabbed his phone. His fingers moved before his brain could stop them. He called his lawyer. "Marcus, I need you to do something. Now. Tonight." "Richard? It's almost midnight." "What?" "There's an orphanage. Mercy Home. It burned down. There's a girl, Amara. I want to adopt her." Silence on the other end. "Richard, you can't just—" "I don't care what it takes. I don't care what it costs. Make it happen." Richard hung up. His heart was pounding. He didn't understand why he was doing this. It didn't make sense. He'd never thought about adoption before. He'd never even liked children much, except his own son. But something about that little girl's eyes wouldn't let him go. 3 weeks later, Amara came home. She stood in the mansion's grand entrance, looking tiny. She wore a new dress. Marcus had bought it, but she still held that one-eared rabbit. "This is your house now," Richard said. His voice sounded strange. He wasn't used to talking to children. Amara looked around. Her eyes were wide. "It's big," she whispered. "Yes." "Is it lonely?" The question surprised Richard. "What?" "Big places can be lonely," Amara said. She looked up at him. "Are you lonely, Mr. Sterling?" Richard's throat felt tight. No one had asked him that before. Not in 3 years. "Call me Richard," he said, avoiding the question. But Amara smiled. A small, gentle smile. "Can I call you Daddy instead?" The word hit Richard like a punch. Daddy. Daniel used to call him that. Before everything went wrong. Before Richard became too busy, too cold, too focused on building his empire. Richard didn't know what to say. Amara took his hand. Her small fingers wrapped around his. "It's okay if you're lonely," she said. "I'm lonely too sometimes. But maybe we could be lonely together. That's not as bad." Something warm spread through Richard's chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe hope. That night, Richard lay in bed listening. For the first time in 3 years, the house wasn't silent. Down the hall, he could hear Amara humming. A soft, sweet sound, like a bird singing after a long winter. The house felt different. Lighter, like someone had opened a window and let fresh air inside. Richard closed his eyes. He didn't feel quite so alone. But he didn't know that across the city, his son Daniel had seen the same news story. Daniel had watched his father adopt a little girl. And Daniel was angry. "A publicity stunt," Daniel muttered, staring at his phone. "That's all it is. He wants people to think he has a heart." But curiosity gnawed at Daniel. And maybe something else. Something that felt like an old wound starting to ache again. 2 weeks later, Daniel made a decision. He would go home. Just once. Just to see. Just to prove to himself that his father hadn't changed at all. He had no idea that this visit would change everything. Daniel's car moved slowly down the familiar driveway. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tight. His heart beat too fast. He hadn't been here in 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years of anger. 2 years of telling himself he didn't care. But he did care. That was the problem. The mansion looked the same. Big, cold, beautiful but empty, like a fancy hotel where nobody actually lived. Daniel parked and sat in his car for a long moment. Rain had started falling again. Soft rain, not a storm. It made little rivers on his windshield. "This is stupid," he whispered to himself. "Why am I even here?" But he knew why. That little girl, Amara, her face had been on the news. His father, the great Richard Sterling, adopting an orphan. Everyone said it was wonderful. Everyone said his father had changed. Daniel didn't believe it. His father didn't change. His father only cared about business, about money, about his reputation. This adoption was probably just another business move, another way to look good in the newspapers. Daniel opened the car door and stepped into the rain. It felt cold on his face, cold and clean, like it was washing something away. He walked to the front door. His hand reached for the doorbell, then stopped. This used to be his home. Should he ring the bell like a stranger? Before he could decide, something made him freeze. Laughter. It came from inside the house. A child's laughter. Light and sweet, like bells ringing. Daniel's breath caught. He'd never heard laughter in this house. Not real laughter. Not the kind that came from deep inside, from pure joy. His hand moved to the door handle. It turned. Unlocked. He pushed the door open slowly, quietly. More laughter floated through the halls. And singing. A little voice singing a song he didn't recognize. Daniel followed the sound. His feet remembered the way. Down the hall. Past the living room where his father used to work late into the night, ignoring everything else. Past the stairs where Daniel used to sit as a child, waiting for his father to notice him. The singing got louder. It came from the kitchen. Daniel's mother used to love the kitchen. She baked cookies there, made hot chocolate, told stories while she cooked. After she died, the kitchen became a tomb. His father never went there. The servants prepared meals, but the kitchen felt dead. Now it was alive. Daniel stood in the doorway, hidden in shadow. What he saw made him forget to breathe. A little girl stood on a stool at the counter. She had flour on her nose and chocolate on her fingers. She was mixing something in a big bowl, singing to herself, "Stir and mix and make it right. Cookies for my daddy tonight." Amara, it had to be her. She was small, so small. Her braids bounced as she stirred. She wore an apron that was way too big for her. It dragged on the floor. But that wasn't what shocked Daniel. His father was there. Richard Sterling sat at the kitchen table. He wasn't working. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't reading financial reports. He was watching Amara, and he was smiling. Daniel's father was smiling, really smiling. Not the fake smile he used for business partners. Not the tired smile he used for photographs. A real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. "Daddy, I think it's ready." Amara announced. She held up the bowl, proud. "Let me see," Richard said. He stood and walked over. He looked into the bowl and nodded seriously. "Perfect. You're a natural baker, Amara. Like Mama used to be?" Amara asked. Daniel's heart stopped. Mama. She was asking about his mother, his real mother. Elena. Richard's smile flickered. Pain crossed his face. But then he nodded. "Yes, exactly like her." "I wish I could have met her," Amara said softly. "But you tell such good stories about her that I feel like I know her, like she's watching us." Richard's eyes got shiny, like tears wanted to come, but he wouldn't let them. "She would have loved you, Amara, so much." Amara hugged Richard's waist. Her small arms barely reached around him. "And I love you, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the whole world." Daniel felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. His father, the man who never had time for hugs, who never said, "I love you," who never came to school plays or birthday parties, was hugging this little girl, holding her tight, like she was precious, like she mattered more than anything. Daniel's hands balled into fists. Anger burned in his chest, hot and sharp. This wasn't fair. Where was this father when Daniel was young? Where was this love when Daniel begged for attention? Where were these smiles when Daniel needed them? His father had changed, but only for her, only for this stranger, not for his real son. Daniel must have made a sound, or maybe moved, because suddenly Amara's head turned toward the doorway. Her eyes met his. They were big and brown and curious. No fear, just interest. "Hello," she said. Her voice was friendly. "Are you a friend of Daddy's?" Richard spun around. His face went white. "Daniel." The name hung in the air like smoke. Daniel stepped into the kitchen. The lights felt too bright. Everything felt too real. "Daniel?" Amara repeated. Her eyes got even bigger. "The Daniel? From the pictures?" "Pictures?" Daniel glanced around. There, on the refrigerator, held by magnets, photographs. Him as a child. Him and his mother. Him graduating from school. His father had put up pictures of him. "You're my brother." Amara jumped down from her stool and ran toward Daniel. Before he could react, she hugged his legs. "I always wanted a brother. Daddy talks about you all the time." Daniel looked at his father. Richard's eyes were wide. Scared, hopeful, sad, all at once. "You talk about me?" Daniel's voice came out harsh. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, "Every day. Daddy misses you so much," Amara said, still hugging Daniel's legs. She looked up at him with those big, trusting eyes. "He says you're brave and smart and good. He says he made mistakes. Big ones. He says." "Amara," Richard interrupted gently. "Maybe we should let Daniel breathe." But Amara shook her head. "No, he needs to know. You're too scared to tell him, so I will." She turned back to Daniel. "Daddy cries sometimes. At night, when he thinks nobody hears. He looks at your pictures and cries. He says he's sorry. Over and over. He says he wishes he could fix things." Daniel felt his anger crack. Underneath, it was something else. Something that hurt worse. Pain. Old pain. Deep pain. The kind that never really goes away. I don't. Daniel's voice broke. He cleared his throat. I don't understand. Why adopt her? Why now? Why not? Why couldn't you just be this way for me? The word stuck in his throat. Richard took a step forward. His eyes were red. I was broken, Daniel. After your mother died, I was so broken that I broke you too. I pushed you away because I was drowning. And by the time I realized what I'd done, you were already gone. So you replaced me? Daniel's voice was bitter. Found a new kid? Started over? No. Richard's voice was sharp. Desperate. Never. Amara didn't replace you. She woke me up. She reminded me what I'd lost. Not just your mother. You. I lost you and it was my fault. Amara let go of Daniel's legs. She walked to Richard and took his hand. Then she walked back and took Daniel's hand. Families aren't about blood, she said. Her voice was small but certain. They're about hearts that stay, even when things are hard, even when people make mistakes. Hearts that choose to stay. Daniel looked down at this little girl, this stranger who wasn't a stranger. She held his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. My first daddy left me at the orphanage when I was a baby, Amara said. He didn't choose to stay. Then the orphanage burned down, and I thought nobody would ever choose me. But your daddy did. He chose me, and now I choose him back. Every day. She squeezed Daniel's hand. You can choose too. You can be angry. That's okay. But you can also choose to try again. That's okay too. Both things can be true. How could a 6-year-old understand so much? Daniel's eyes burned. Tears wanted to come, but he fought them. He'd been angry for so long. Anger felt safe. Anger felt strong. But standing here, in this kitchen that smelled like cookies and hope, holding hands with a little girl who'd lost everything but still believed in families, the anger felt heavy. Tired. Richard took a shaky breath. I know I don't deserve another chance, Daniel. I know I failed you. But if you'll let me, if you'll just stay for dinner, I would like to try, not to fix the past. We can't fix it. But maybe we could try building something new. Daniel looked at his father. Really looked at him. Richard had aged. Gray hair at his temples. Lines around his eyes. He looked smaller somehow. Not like the giant Daniel, remembered from childhood. Just a man. A broken man trying to heal. Amara smiled up at Daniel. Please stay, brother. We're making cookies. Chocolate chip. They're almost ready. The timer beeped as if agreeing with her. Daniel realized he was still holding Amara's hand. Her small fingers were sticky with chocolate. His expensive suit would be ruined. He didn't care. Okay, he whispered. I'll stay. For dinner. Amara's smile could have lit up the whole house. Richard's eyes filled with tears. This time, he let them fall. And Daniel, standing in the kitchen where his mother used to bake, felt something shift inside his chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Dinner was strange. They sat at the big dining table. The one that usually felt empty even when people sat at it. But tonight it felt different. Amara sat between Richard and Daniel, swinging her legs because they were too short to reach the floor. She talked the whole time. About her day. About the birds she saw in the garden. About the book Richard had read to her last night. About how she wanted to plant flowers in the spring. What kind of flowers? Daniel asked. He was surprised by his own voice. Surprised he was joining the conversation. Roses. Amara said, her eyes bright, like the ones in the picture. Daddy showed me a picture of Mama in the garden with roses everywhere. Pink ones and red ones and white ones. He said she loved them. Daniel remembered his mother's rose garden. She'd spent hours there, talking to the flowers like they were her friends. After she died, the roses died too. His father had let them wither away. The garden is empty now, Richard said quietly. I couldn't take care of them after she was gone. Then we'll plant new ones. Amara announced, all 3 of us, a family garden, with roses for Mama and new flowers for us. Flowers that mean new beginnings. She said it so simply, like healing was just that easy. Plant some flowers. Start again. Daniel wanted to say it wasn't that simple. That pain didn't disappear just because you planted something pretty. But looking at Amara's hopeful face, he kept quiet. After dinner, Amara yawned. "I'm sleepy, Daddy." "Bedtime," Richard said. He stood and held out his hand. Amara took it. Then she held out her other hand to Daniel. "Will you come too, brother? I want to show you my room." Daniel hesitated. Richard's eyes met his. In them, Daniel saw a question. A request. "Please, just a little longer." "Okay," Daniel said. He took Amara's hand. They walked upstairs together. Amara's room was at the end of the hall. It used to be a guest room, cold and formal and boring. Now it looked like happiness had exploded inside it. The walls were covered with drawings, crayon pictures of houses and families, and flowers. There were stuffed animals everywhere, books stacked on shelves. A nightlight shaped like a moon glowed in the corner. "I drew that one today," Amara said, pointing to a picture on the wall. "That's Daddy, and that's me, and that's you." Daniel stepped closer. In the drawing, 3 stick figures held hands. They were all smiling. Above them, Amara had written in wobbly letters, "My family." His throat felt tight. Richard helped Amara into bed. He tucked the blanket around her, making sure her one-eared rabbit was close. Then he sat on the edge of the bed. "Story time?" Amara asked. "Always," Richard said. He began telling a story about a brave little girl who brought light to a dark castle. His voice was soft and gentle. Daniel had never heard his father speak this way. Halfway through the story, Amara's eyes started closing. By the end, she was asleep, breathing softly. Richard bent down and kissed her forehead. "Good night, little one," he whispered. They left the room quietly, closing the door behind them. In the hallway, silence fell between them, heavy silence, full of things that needed to be said. "The garden," Richard said finally. Would you walk with me? To the garden?" Daniel nodded. He didn't trust his voice. They walked downstairs and out the back door. The night air was cool. Stars sparkled above them. They walked to where the rose garden used to be. Now it was just dirt and dead stems, ghosts of what used to grow there. Richard stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty ground. "I planted these roses with your mother," he said, "the week after we got married. She said roses were like love. They need attention, care, time. You can't ignore them and expect them to grow." He turned to Daniel. "I ignored you, Daniel, not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know how to show love after your mother died. I was so scared of feeling anything that I shut everything out, including you, especially you, because every time I looked at you, I saw her, and it hurt too much." Daniel's hands clenched into fists. "So you made me hurt instead?" "Yes." Richard's voice broke. "Yes, I did. And I am so sorry. I can't take back those years. I can't undo the damage. But I am asking, begging, for a chance to do better now. Why should I believe you'll change?" Daniel's voice was harsh. Years of pain made it sharp. "You changed for her. For Amara. But what happens when things get hard again? What happens when—" "She didn't change me," Richard interrupted. "She woke me up. There's a difference. The change was always possible. I needed to see what I'd become, what I'd lost." Amara held up a mirror, and I finally saw myself, and I hated what I saw. Richard's eyes were wet. I saw a man who'd lost his wife and then lost his son because he was too proud, too scared, too broken to fight for what mattered. I saw a man living in a mansion full of things but empty of love, and I realized I'd become exactly what your mother never wanted me to be. He stepped closer to Daniel. "You asked why I adopted Amara. The truth? I saw her eyes on that news report, and I saw myself. Alone, scared, trying to be brave. And something inside me broke open. I thought, maybe if I could save her, maybe if I could give her the love she deserved, maybe I could learn how to be human again. Maybe I could learn how to be the father I should have been to you." Daniel felt tears on his face. He didn't try to stop them anymore. I don't know if I can forgive you, he whispered. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. I know, Richard said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance. A chance to try. A chance to show up. A chance to be here, really here, in a way I never was before. They stood there in the dead garden, father and son, separated by years of hurt, but connected by years of love that never quite died. She's amazing, Daniel said finally. Amara, she's something special. Richard smiled through his tears. She is. She talks about you constantly. Asks questions. What was Daniel like as a kid? What games did he play? What made him laugh? She wants to know everything about you. Why? Because you're her brother. In her heart, you already are. She doesn't care that you haven't been here. She doesn't care about the past. She just knows that families love each other. And she loves you already. Daniel laughed, but it came out like a sob. How can she love me? She doesn't even know me. That's how love works sometimes, Richard said. It doesn't wait for logic. It doesn't need reasons. It just is. Your mother taught me that. Amara reminded me of it. And maybe you can teach me believe in it again. Daniel wiped his face. I'm angry. Still. At you. At everything. I know. And I'm scared. Scared that if I let myself hope, you'll disappoint me again. I know that too. But... Daniel took a shaky breath. But I want to try. Not for you. For her. For Amara. She deserves to have a whole family. And maybe I deserve a second chance too. To have a father again. Richard's face crumpled. He reached out hesitant and pulled Daniel into a hug. Daniel stiffened at first. Then, slowly, he hugged back. They stood there in the dead garden, holding each other, crying for all the lost years and all the broken pieces. I'm sorry, Richard whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, Daniel said. I know you are. It wasn't forgiveness. Not complete forgiveness. That would take time. Maybe years. Maybe forever. But it was a start. 3 months later. The mansion was different now. Music played in the morning. Amara sang while she got ready for school. Richard made pancakes. Terrible, lumpy pancakes, but he tried. Daniel came over for breakfast twice a week. They planted the garden together. All 3 of them, digging in the dirt, planting roses and tulips and daisies. Amara wore tiny gardening gloves and a hat too big for her head. She narrated everything. This one is for Mama, she said, planting a white rose. And this one is for new beginnings. And this one is for family. And this one is just because it's pretty. The house filled with laughter. Real laughter. Amara's drawings covered the refrigerator. She drew pictures of their family, always together, always smiling. Richard changed. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly, like ice melting in spring. He worked less, came home early, had dinner with Amara every night. He started a charity fund in Elena's name, helping orphanages rebuild. He did it quietly, not for publicity, but because Amara asked him to. Other kids need daddies too, she'd said. We should help them find their families. So he did. Daniel came over more and more, first once a week, then twice. Then he found himself stopping by after work just to say hello, just to hear Amara's stories, just to sit with his father and talk about nothing important. They didn't talk about the past much. It was still too painful. But they talked about now, about tomorrow, about the future they were building together. One Sunday, they all went to park. Amara ran ahead, chasing butterflies. Richard and Daniel walked behind her, side by side. Thank you, Richard said quietly. For what? For trying, for being here, for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Daniel watched Amara spin in circles, her arms out, her face tilted toward the sun. She was laughing, always laughing. She saved us, didn't she? Daniel said, this little girl we barely know. She saved both of us. Richard nodded. She reminded us what matters. Not money, not pride, not even being right. Just love and showing up and choosing each other every day. Amara ran back to them. Daddy, Daniel, come see. I found a ladybug. They ran after her, a billionaire and his son, chasing a 6-year-old girl across the grass, laughing like children. The mansion wasn't lonely anymore. It was full of noise and mess and laughter and love, full of second chances and new beginnings, full of family that chose each other, not because of blood, but because of hearts that stayed. That evening, as the sun set, they sat in the garden together. The roses were starting to bloom, small buds of pink and red and white, reaching toward the light. Amara sat between Richard and Daniel, holding both their hands. Are you happy, little one? Richard asked. Amara smiled, that beautiful, innocent smile that could light up the whole world. I'm home, she said simply. We're all home. And she was right. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel. Share with someone who needs to hear that families are built by choice, forgiveness, and hearts that choose to stay. Let's spread this message of hope together. Love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up even when it's hard. It's about second chances and brave little girls who remind us what truly matters. Drop a comment below. What did this story teach you about family and forgiveness? Remember, families aren't about blood. They're about hearts that stay.